3, 2, 1. Yeah. Oh, I was a little premature there. That's all right. So, welcome back to Jorge's Pleasure Hour.
Yes.
Bike on a platter. And we got a very special guest here tonight. Some would say a controversial figure. Some would say a mad genius. Some would say a wild red advocate of the Republican Party.
I would say a little bit of everything.
Now, why don't you tell us who you are?
I'm a conservative. I'm a father. I'm a Catholic. I wouldn't, the Republican Party, I criticize the Republican Party a hell of a lot.
Okay,
so I wouldn't say I'm like a wild...
Equally dished.
...advocate of the Republican Party. But, so I advocate for the things that the Republican Party should be advocating for.
What are some of those fundamentals?
Just broadly conservatism. I guess we can describe it quickly, right? Just conservatism, tradition, right? Reactionary.
Okay, so far right?
I would say, some people would consider me far right, but 20 years ago, I would be like, normal, everyday centrist.
Sure, yeah, because when I think of reactionary, when I look at a political spectrum, you see reactionary as the far right side and radical is the far left side. So is there a radical in you too?
Once again, 30 years ago, 30 years ago, the things that I am saying, wouldn't be too controversial. So...
Understood.
That just goes to show you how far, who moved where, right?
Sure. No, I get it. No, I think about like old school America,
right?
The 50s, the 40s, the values then.
Certainly. Yeah.
Okay. So, aside from us knowing each other, I wanted to bring you on because, you certainly have made a lot of noise out there with the red elephants. And I looked through your podcast and I watched some of your videos and a lot of people have talked about it over the years. Oh yeah, Vince is talking about this and talking about that, and it seemed like you had a very strong opinion towards values in the United States, where racial divides are being skewed. I could go on about all the things that you point out, but it seems there's an opinion about you that's false, that's being put out there.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
It was so funny when by the way, where do we look? Are we supposed to look that way? Or
anywhere.
You can look anywhere you want. Okay, you can look at me all night if you like.
God, there's so many cameras all over.
I smile and I wave, I blow kisses, all that shit.
So yeah, I've known Eric for a while, and this was I tell the story on my show all the time. It's like, all of a sudden, after 13 years of working for a company, an article starts getting passed around the office, and it's the OC Weekly article, and the title is Orange County's Scariest People.
11 scariest people.
11 scariest people.
It was like right on Halloween. I remember when the thing came out. Like, look, dude, there's Vince in there. Holy crap! And everybody's like, Eric just scored the lottery. He's going to get laid off tomorrow. Like I was going to get all his clients or something. But
damn, it's that bad, huh?
I think they stretch, but go ahead.
Oh, obviously they stretch. I'm not a scary person, but yeah, basically it was all based on like this grudge that this one journalist had at OC Weekly against me personally, because there was this like Huntington Beach. So here's how my channel started out. I went to these protests or these rallies or what have you, and my whole channel was about live streaming exactly what happened, because a lot of times we know the mainstream media spins a certain narrative. Yep. And so that was my whole thing, live streaming exactly what happened. And when I got back, there was a bunch of fights that broke out, and I got back and I recorded a video and I told everyone exactly what happened. I showed everyone from start to finish exactly what happened, and it got, hundreds of thousands of shares on Facebook, millions of views, hundreds of thousands of views on YouTube. And this particular Orange County OC Weekly journalist had a grudge against me for this, I suspect, and then started writing a couple of articles about me. The first one was about the Red Elephants media outlet, and said that was like this far right Nazi organization or what have you, and and now we can see how they label basically everyone this nowadays, right?
Right. If you
Anyone
don't
that
agree with
disagrees
what they have to say.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the second one was the OC, Orange County's scariest people, and I was one of those scariest people. I can think of a variety of other people in Orange County that are probably a heck of a lot more scarier.
Sure.
You know,
With money and power.
right, exactly, more scary than me.
And influence.
Right. And so that's what happened. It got passed around the office, and not too long after that, I was called into the Aurelio. Is it Aurelio? I was called into the HR manager,
Mr. Fox. We need to discuss this.
And so that was that. But
dude, so it's interesting because I'm an advocate of truth, and I don't think truth is something that can be found out there anymore. Everything is washed and rinsed and then spun cycled and then spit out and put in the dryer and then hung out in ways that any media outlet decides they want to show it.
Right.
And it seems like everybody's pointing a finger saying, no, this person said this, and no, that person said that, and no, I'm telling the truth and you're lying, and back and forth and back and forth. It's to the point where I don't even give a fuck anymore. And I don't even want to listen to anything. Mm-hmm. So it's always intrigued me that you've gone after what you would consider real news. But the question I do have for you, a lot of people have looked at you and said, "Oh, this guy's being like a white supremacist and a racist, right, and an Arian Nation dude, and he's only advocating for white people." What do you have to say about that?
Well, white supremacy would mean that you think that white people are superior. It's right there in the name. Are like a superior race than all of the other races. This is what white supremacy would mean to me. But white, whatever else they call you, neo-Nazi, whatever have you, right? This is not what in fact, I reject this outright. I'm a Christian. I'm a Catholic. I reject this idea outright. And I've never espoused anything like that on my show ever before. But of course, when there are obstructionists, as the John Birch Society would say back when he went over the 1943 Communist Directive, if there are obstructionists, label them Nazi, white supremacist, anti-Semitic, whatever you can, in order to make that label true. If you repeat it enough, that label will become true, and then people won't want to gravitate toward your message and hear what you are saying. So this is
okay. So it's putting the red letter on a somebody, and it's like it doesn't matter the content of that person anymore. They've got the red letter, so to speak, like the scarlet letter.
Yeah, and then you equate them with other people who are, sort of not good characters, and you sort of put them together in whatever sentence or article or something like that, and then people think that about that person forever, and then never, want to.
You never
to
watch
listen.
that image.
Right, never. Well, not only me, but I'm just saying.
I'm saying the people out there that once they've painted an image of you, it's hard to erase it.
Oh yeah, for sure, 100%,
okay.
Especially with the internet nowadays. But what I'm saying is that if they don't want people to hear your message, this is the tactic that they use. It's a tactic that's been around for hundreds of years.
Okay, the reason why I ask is because we cover a lot of race in here, and I think we poke a lot of fun at, especially people who are hardcore racists because they're such idiots. But you've been spun as being like an advocate for the Caucasian race or the Aryan race or whatever, in highlighting some of the what would be considered minority problems out there and things that have happened, and how there's a skew there. It seems like you're trying to illustrate there's some kind of a skew against white people. Is that what you're saying? Okay, can you say more about that? Because it's always been traditional, and then I'll let you talk. Sorry, it's always been traditional that it was always the the colored people that were causing trouble when it was really white domination. But now you're saying that there's a switch of some sort, or what's going on?
There absolutely has been a flip. And by the way, what about this guy? He needs to talk too.
I'm going to.
Are we taking up his time?
No.
I'm getting my questions out, and then George will get his questions out.
Well, there's so much to touch on in that particular question. I mean, where do we want to go to first? Do we want to go to what exactly is happening in the media, or what exactly is happening at private corporations? I mean, the Seattle City Council brought in all of the white people that work there and had them participate in basically a re-education camp, telling them that because they are white, their whiteness, they have white privilege, they are racist, and they have to deconstruct their whiteness. If we look at what happened at the top nuclear research facility, Sandia Labs, that is the top nuclear research facility for the U.S. government. They brought in all their white employees and basically had a re-education camp to talk about deconstructing their whiteness. And then if we go to university professors, I mean, there are hundreds of stories out there about what university professors say to their students. There's one university professor, I think she was at CUNY, she said that having white children equals white supremacy. I mean, there are just hundreds of different instances in academia, in media, in Hollywood, in government of this happening. Now, if we want to talk about systemic racism against white people, we can look at affirmative action. It is undeniable that a black student with a grade point average of X is going to get in college 4 times faster than a white student with a grade point average of X. This is just undeniable. This is actually, as a matter of fact, the DOJ just did an investigation, and they have determined that Yale undeniably has their admissions process based on race. And then all of the other things. I mean, just look at what the media is saying right now, withholding context about the Black Lives Matter narrative. Look at all what's going on right now. Look at the Black Lives Matter leaders and what they say. And so, I mean, there's just so much to touch on. I guess we'd have to narrow down the question a little bit, right?
No, it's okay. I mean, you know, you're giving a good general bandwidth of backstory of where your issue that you advocate for presents itself. In what levels and in what institutions, and that's good to know. So, but I guess my question to you is, why does this matter? Why does it matter that there's even if it's a perceived inequality? I know you have some facts that prove that this is happening, but even if it's a perceived inequality by you or whoever, I mean, why does it matter? Why is it important?
Well, because number one, I mean, there's a blatant double standard here. Right? There's a blatant double standard, and I think that for all the talk about treating people equally under the law, this is just not happening, and it's quickly becoming the case where white Americans are becoming second-class citizens in this society. So if we look at privilege, right? We look at in terms of privilege. They say that white Americans. Oprah just had a white privilege seminar that she held, and basically what she said was that no matter which rung of the ladder of success that you land on, if you are white, you have more privilege than everyone else. This is what she talks about. But I ask the question, is that which group of people in the country can commit the largest mass shootings in history and to basically get no media coverage? In Chicago, there was a mass shooting that happened. 14 people were shot. No media coverage about it because the perpetrator was the wrong type of perpetrator. They only like to highlight the perpetrator of mass shootings or attacks like this if the perpetrator is white. Mm-hmm. There was another mass shooting that happened in Washington, D.C. 21 people shot. This was a mass shooting committed by a black person, and there was no media coverage on that. Which group of people can get away with that? If that was a white person who did that, the media would be outraged. They would be covering it 24/7. They would be talking about white terrorism and all the rest. They would be holding white nationalist congressional hearings. Just look at what happened with the 5-year-old kid who was riding his bike in his front yard, Cannon Hinnant,
yes,
where this black man walked up with a gun and executed him in broad daylight while he was riding his bike in his own front yard, shot him right in the head, killed him. This was a black man who did this. If it was a white man who walked up to a black child, which doesn't happen, by the way, and shoots him point blank in the head while he's riding his bike.
Well, it's not that we hear about.
Well, I mean, we can judge this based off of statistics, right? The interracial homicides statistics are clear. It's undeniable. This is one of the things that they call me a white supremacist for or a racist for, is because I point these things out. Mm-hmm. The interracial attacks, the statistics are there. They're undeniable. 90%. There were 540,000 interracial attacks between blacks and whites last year. 500,000 of those were black on white. It almost never happens in the reverse. We see hundreds of videos out there of this sort of thing happening. But if that was in the reverse, if it was a white man who walked up to a black child and shot him in the head in broad daylight, we would see destruction beyond the destruction that we're seeing right now with all of these George Floyd riots and Jacob Blake riots and Rayshard Brooks riots. And so this is the double standard that I like to point out in my show.
Gotcha.
And provide people with statistics, undeniable science that disproves the narrative that the media is saying right now.
So do you think that society is maybe going through like a kind of a shift where they're over exaggerating over here, and white people are getting less equality on that front because they're trying to create a balance, and then eventually it's going to shift back? Or what do you think is going to happen?
I don't know if it'll... I mean, I think that they can't keep this up. Eventually the pendulum's going to swing in the other direction, but my point is that...
Okay, but you could agree that it's a societal pendulum, possibly, and we're just going through the aches and pains of a growing society.
I don't know if I don't know if I would just consider it like natural aches and pains. I think this is a concerted effort to push a certain agenda.
Okay, but who's pushing that agenda?
Well, I mean, you can put a whole bunch of people into that category: the corporations, government, people who get positions of power,
but
very rich billionaires who are pulling strings.
What do you think's the whole? What's the underlying?
Well, it could be a racket. It could be all just a big racket. I mean, just look at for instance, all the money that flows in after one of these things happens, right? Look at all the money that flows from corporations. They donate millions upon millions of dollars to Black Lives Matter organization and other organizations like this. Where's this money going? This money is, I'm sure it's like, it just creates this like giant slush fund where this money is redistributed out to other activist organizations and particularly, it could just be like a financial racket. It could be, I think there's a lot of reasons, right? It could be for financial reasons. It could be a big scam. It could be for electoral reasons. I'm sure that there are some reasons in there that would be, directed toward the results of the election coming up in November. These things typically only happen right before an election anyway. And so, there's probably a lot of reasons.
Okay.
So going back to the statistics, are there any for black cops shooting white men?
Yeah, there are some statistics out there. I don't remember them off the top of my head, but there are some statistics out there about black cops shooting white men. But the whole Black Lives Matter narrative is completely debunked by science itself. And this is what gets me about this entire thing. This is what gets me entirely upset, is that when you look at the scientific studies that control for crime, they find that no racial bias exists in police shootings when you control for crime. And what do I mean? I mean that if you look at police shootings on a yearly basis, according to the Washington Post database, you have 350 white people who are shot and killed by police yearly versus 150 black people who are shot and killed by police yearly. So we have hundreds more whites shot and killed by police yearly, and basically none of those stories get media coverage.
I do notice that. I think that's pretty obvious. I think most people could say, when's the last time you heard a story about that like that?
Well, never. You never heard a story about that. And you never heard a story. I mean, you just look at the recent attack that happened in Baltimore. There's a black man who just snuck up behind a random white man walking down the street and hit him in the back of the head with the brick. You never see that in the reverse. It just doesn't happen in the reverse, and the statistics back that up. And I want to just spend a moment on this, and before I get back to the police shooting statistics. This happens with black on Hispanic as well, and this is something I talk about a lot. I have a bunch of Hispanic friends, and one of my Mexican friends actually brought this to my attention a while ago, is that there was an attack in Long Beach that happened here, and there was an elotero, which is a corn guy, like a corn. Do you know what elotero? Yep. And these black teens,
those are Jorge's peeps,
right? Attacked this corn guy and just beat him up relentlessly, and this happens all the time as well. There was another older Hispanic gentleman who died in the hospital of his injuries, and like I said, this stuff basically never happens in the reverse. But if it does, if you get that one fleeting incident where something similar does happen in the reverse, it's all over the media. The race of the perpetrator and the race of the victim is in the headline. And they're so desperate for stories like these that they jump on hoaxes all the time. Look at Jussie Smollett. Look at Bubba Wallace of the NASCAR who thought he found a noose in his garage. It turned out it was just a garage pool. But anyway, back to the police shootings. And so there are hundreds more whites killed by police than blacks every single year. And what the media will say was, well, they'll be like, well, yeah, that's true. But if you put this into the perspective of population, you will find that if you take 150 blacks who are shot by police and divide it by their population, which is 45 million, and multiply that by 100,000, you will get a rate of 3.1 per 100,000. If you take the 350 whites who are shot and killed by police, divide it by their population, which is 195 million, multiply that by 100,000, you will get a rate of 1.1 per 100,000. So
you sound like one of those math dudes who's like got numbers wrapped around his finger. I was watching that shit. I was like, what the fuck is going on? I can't even keep track
I talk
of this.
about this stuff all day long. And so they'll be like,
drilled in.
Yeah. So they'll be like, well, see, blacks are shot at a 3 times the rate as white Americans, but the correct benchmark is not population. The correct benchmark is crime. If we look at the statistics, and we've had these for a long time, they're all available for you guys to look at for yourself out there. You'll find that black Americans commit violent crime at 5 times the rate of white Americans. They're 5 times more likely to commit a violent crime. They're also 10 times more likely to commit a homicide. Just 6% of our population, black males, aged 18 to 35, 4% of our population really, commits over half of all the homicide in the country. Just 4% of our population commits over half of all the homicide in the country. So you have to adjust for crime. And what the economists will do is that they'll control for the crime rates and police encounters, of which they have at a much higher rate than white Americans. And when you control for this correct benchmark, all disparities in police shootings completely disappear. And it turns out that white Americans are actually far more likely to get shot and killed by police. I'll give you a perfect example. There was a man named Tony Timpa who was kneeled on by police for much longer than George Floyd was, 18 minutes straight, and he eventually died. There was a video out there of this happening. None of the national mainstream outlets covered this, much like the Cannon Hinnon story. Almost none of the national mainstream outlets covered that particular story, and they don't cover any of these stories that are similar to this. There was another man named Daniel Shaver who was shot and killed by police. None of the mainstream outlets covered that story. And so they know that there's a particular population of the country that doesn't have the impulse control or the cognitive ability, I guess you would say. On average, they think very racially to process the information, come to a final sensible conclusion, and therefore they are going to inevitably go out there and riot, and the media loves this, because then they can create there will be all sorts of clicks and on their articles and views on their videos and all sorts of other things, plus it's electorally useful to them, and it's financially useful to them. And so it's just this big ongoing thing of people acting absolutely insane. And the ones who are actually willing to lay this out there for them and explain everything for them and explain why none of this is true, those are the ones who are censored from social media because they want this to continue.
So, okay, so you just said a gigantic mouthful, and I'm still running numbers in my head, and I don't know if I'll ever get to those numbers that you just ran, but that was some heavy shit, and I want to see if George has anything to say on this before I jump in on the bigger picture of what you're talking about. George, you got anything?
I was just wondering, like, with the statistics that you just said about black on white crime, I wonder why that is. I wonder why, if they're programmed that way to just commit more crime.
I don't know about
like, is it from oppression or?
No, I think no, definitely not from oppression. This is one of the things I talk about in my show as well, is that when you look at the crime rate, the crime rate of the black community back in the 50s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and the incarceration rate of the black community in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, it was a lot lower per 100,000 than it is today. Uh-huh. And this is largely due, and the biggest portion of this can be attributed to the breakdown of the family, in my particular opinion. Back in the 1950s, only 18% of black children were born out of wedlock. Only 18%. Today, 75 to 80% of black children are born out of wedlock, meaning fatherless homes. Mm-hmm. And everyone knows the statistics surrounding fatherless homes. 60% of prisoners in prison grew up in a fatherless home. 70% of teen pregnancies, fatherless home. 80% of juvenile dropouts, fatherless home. 80% of people who end up in juvenile detention facilities, fatherless home. You're also 5 times more likely to grow up in poverty if you grow up in a fatherless home. And so a big portion of this can be attributed to the breakdown of the family. And then another portion of this can be attributed to culture. Another large portion can be attributed to culture. I didn't say this, Don Lemon did back in 2013. He said if the Black American community wants to do better, then they have to change these particular things about their culture. Stop making it uncool to go to school. Stop making it uncool to speak proper English. Stop making it uncool to finish school.
You're talking about the street pressure, right? The street pressure
right.
that the family that they find in the street that reinforces this. Oh man, you don't need to go to school. Oh man, come on, man, just bang with me, motherfucker, bang.
So
Let's bang.
It all leads to education, right? If they had the education, then I mean, do you think it would help if whether they had a father?
I think it starts at family.
Okay, I'm 100% with you on that one. That's there's this saying that my parents used to say, the family that prays together stays together, or the family that just all these little things. I'm not a very religious person anymore, but I believe that a strong family is very important because you're less likely to be influenced by the family of the street, so to speak.
I don't remember who said it, but I saw a tweet by somebody, and they had said, if Black people really want to help themselves, or if they really want to make a difference, the NFL or the NBA should start finding players who have, 5 children with different mothers, and don't care for them, and start there. And I really thought about it, and I was thinking about what you're just saying right now, and that popped in my head, and I thought, damn, like this dude, he's shooting that out there, but it's sort of true.
Well, it's true. It is true.
Because, a lot of players do that. Well,
a lot of the population in general does that. I mean, just look at, watch some of my wife likes to watch these laws, the shows with the judge, not like Judge Judy, some of these types of shows. There's a bunch of shows out there that are sort of like this, right? Maury, I don't know if Maury exists anymore.
Oh yeah, just kind of the trash court.
You know what I'm talking about, right? yeah. So these guys get out there and they're like, they
Judge
got like
Brown.
5 baby mama. And these kids don't have any. You mentioned education. That's not the. It has to start in the home. It has to start with a change in the culture and a change in the family, and they have to. The fatherless homes rate has to go down, but that starts with them. That change happens with them. And if we look at the father figure is the structure, is the foundation, the rock, the order,
spiritual leader,
right?
In the home.
He's the order. Right? The mother is more emotionally driven, thinks emotionally. She would represent the chaos. I see you have Jordan Peterson talked about this. So you have a yin-yang sign right there. Jordan Peterson, and a lot of people don't like Jordan Peterson, but he talked about this. He said that you have order versus chaos. And,
it's the constant struggle in the universe.
Right, the constant struggle in the universe. And basically you want to be in between there.
It's balance.
And it's balance,
that is the
right?
way of the Tao, to find balance between those two forces that are constantly juxtaposed.
Right, Tao, right, exactly.
The Tao. Mm-hmm.
And women, if you grew up in a single mother household, you're only going to have that chaos, that destruction almost, right? That you're super emotional thinking. And there's a lot of other things that go into play in regards to this, but to keep it simple, these would be the things these would be the examples that I would give. But it has to start with culture and culture.
Agreed 100%, and I really like what you said about the family because that really drives something home. And so, I'm kind of gathering where you're going with all this. At least I think in that you're trying to bring back the 50s. So you want to see Model Ts driving around, and you want chocolate shakes and hamburgers served at the drive-thru.
Well, Model Ts were a 30 thing, right? Those were in the 30s.
Hey, whatever, man. You don't have to correct me. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Right. Model Ts
we already know that.
20s, 30s. Yeah, I wouldn't really focus on the material.
I'm not a car guy.
Focus on the. I wouldn't really focus on the material of.
I'm joking,
that
by
era.
the way, Vince.
Right. Yeah,
we do that a lot in
more
here.
Of like the culture of that era.
We're kind of like screwballs that like to poke fun at each other in here.
Certainly, 100%.
Because you did some deep ass shit in here, and that was like, I'm like, wow, spinning out.
Yeah,
it was neat.
Hey, let's
let's
all take some DMT and
well, maybe next time. You want to do it next time?
Somebody.
No, I can't. I don't do any of that stuff.
Yeah,
I was just sort of like making a joke about
but all seriousness.
Sort of have like a Joe Rogan type feel here with the podcast.
I'll slip it in your drink next time I give it to you. So, anyways, but seriously,
you hear that though? He has a Joe Rogan feel with this podcast.
It does.
Like this one does?
We're trying to separate ourselves from that, but that's kind of. We draw some inspiration.
Hey, I'll say it again. You know what? That guy's pushing some boundaries, and I tip my hat to him for doing it way sooner than we did. But anyways, it seems to me like I'm going to go out on a limb here and just say it. Sounds to me like you're saying that there was a culture at a time in the United States that would have been more grounding than what is going on today. You mentioned family. You mentioned an uneven distribution of racial equality, which I want to know why. Why do you think that's happening? What's the core of that push? What is pushing that? I mean, there's the obvious things that a lot of conspiracy theory people talk about, and a lot of people that really dig in talk about, which is nobody gives a fuck at the top level. All the elite, the people that run the show, they just want to make money at all cost. It doesn't matter how they make it. I would assume that maybe that's a little component of it. What do you think? What's driving this at the core level? This disparity in racial equality.
You mean,
and this scatteredness of families. What's driving that in America? All of this.
Oh God, we would need like 5 hours to talk about that.
Okay.
Are we talking? What are we talking about specifically, though?
Okay, so you have a complete degradation of what's going on in the home. You've got overconsumptionism and commercialism. You have racial tension and over equalities. We're distracted by cheap Walmart and Target goods and Amazon and anything immediate at our fingertips, which we talk about a lot on this show. What's going on? What's the goal of it?
Well, I think you mentioned something, is that the elites just don't care. The elites don't care if poor people are fighting other poor people in the street. The elites don't care, what's going on in Baltimore or what's going on in these riots in Kenosha, Wisconsin, which are completely based on baseless BS, by the way. I don't know if we can swear on the show or not.
You can say whatever the fuck you fucking want. How
so
about that?
The Kenosha riots are completely based on bullshit. They don't care these riots are happening because these riots are never going to touch them. They're never going to encroach into their gated communities, in their ivory towers that they live in. They're always going to be protected. They have a private security force that they pay thousands of dollars for a month to protect them and to protect their family. But as far as like the degradation of society and sort of like where people have a more materialistic view on things and gravitate towards like these cheap, as you said, Walmart goods and wages declining and quality of life declining and things like this. I mean, this is due to a whole variety of different things that I've gotten into on my show. But like I said, it would take hours to go over all of the different causes.
That's okay. You know what matters? Did you ever see the movie Elysium?
Yeah, I have. Yes. Yeah.
So that if this continues on the path that we're on right now, where the planet overpopulates because we just keep having more and more and more and more human beings, which is not sustainable, and there's the greater separation of the classes and all that stuff. Eventually, that's kind of how it would be, right? Like it's going to be instead of being.
Think Ready Player One.
Yeah, Ready Player One.
Think
right?
Ready Player One, living on top of each
Dude,
other. Think Ready Player One meets Idiocracy.
Okay, I'll take Idiocracy, Ready Player One, and Elysium and put all three of them together, and that's what it's going to be. You're going to have this dude that's like huffing the latest, greatest, or putting something in his eye, the latest, greatest drug, and then he puts on his headset as he's hunkered down in this little shanty shack, and there's explosions going on all around him. He doesn't care. He's in a little virtual world, and all the elite are up in this high level, higher atmosphere paradise, and they're regenerating. That's basically themselves.
What's happening right now. Actually, I mean,
we're starting to see it. Yeah, I mean, there's so much
drinking baby's blood and
I know. Hey, did you watch when Guy came on and talked about that?
No, did he?
Dude, Guy, he didn't quite get there about the drinking the blood.
Did you talk about the adrenochrome?
Dude, he started to allude to all of the Hollywood Satan stuff, and it was gnarly.
Look it up. Hey, there was an FBI document that was released a few months ago. I think back in March or April, right before this whole coronavirus thing happened. Which don't get me started on that either. But
you might get us banned from YouTube,
right?
Fuck it. I know, right?
But
where next? Spotify? Where are we going next?
Well, Spotify seems to be censoring. I don't know. We'll have to see what happens with that thing because there was the Alex Jones podcast wasn't uploaded to Spotify with Joe Rogan. There was a couple of others that weren't uploaded. I don't know. Whatever. I'm sort of getting off track here.
We do that in here,
right?
It's okay. We still love you.
What the heck were we even talking about? What were we talking about?
It's okay. We still love you.
What were we talking about? The fetuses?
Yeah.
The
Adrenal gland?
You said Guy Hughes.
Dude, we totally threw him off. I got you, man.
I don't remember what we were talking about here. I know we were talking about like baby's blood.
Well, see, here's the thing. We could talk about this forever, and we could go down all these different avenues, and we could, like, just explore it forever. Because I've done a lot of research, too. And I'm not a numbers person like you fucking...
I don't do any research
mathematician.
or do any math.
Bullshit.
I just come in here to listen.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes I feel that way when you're sitting over there in your corner going...
Well, I mean, when we have a guest, someone that does their research and is this knowledgeable, you just can't help but just...
Yeah. Unlike my stupid ass who constantly interrupts and...
Yeah, and then I forget about all my questions. I'm like, I don't even give a shit.
Well,
listening.
You still have questions, though, right?
Yeah, I do. But
okay.
No, later.
Okay, well,
we got like a whole nother 30 minutes here, so...
Okay. Well,
rattle them off.
All right. Well,
right. It's an hour, right?
First, I want to close with something, though. Okay. So, I think we went right to the ultimate, and the feudal system is returned. It never really fully went away, but now it's what it is. It's a feudal system. Monarchs.
I would describe it more of like a caste system.
Yeah. And it like India.
Yeah.
Except more horrendous. Because
I would describe it in
there's no integrity, and there's no I mean, I don't know if a caste system has integrity. I mean, it seems like it's designed with a purpose in society, or what the view of society is. But here, it's just, hey, anybody who can get to the top, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really like to. I very rarely dive into philosophical ways of explaining exactly what's going on. Occasionally I do. It's usually more...
We do a lot on this show.
Meat and potatoes, just what's going on today. Here's the news. Here's why this is wrong. Here's the story on this. Sometimes I will, when I'm doing this and on the live show, maybe talking with someone on the phone when I have call-ins and things like this. But it's just absolute insanity. And here's the thing, is that the media has the power to change the perception. Here's what's going on. Half the country is living in reality. The other half of the country is not living in reality. They're living in a completely alternate reality where things that, tweets like LeBron James's from the other day that says that every time we step foot outside, black people are being hunted down by white people, and black people are afraid to leave their houses. The half of the country is living in that alternate reality that is not true, and the other half of the country is like, whoa, hold on a second.
Which world?
What? Like, here's what the numbers show. I just saw 100 videos that show the exact opposite of that happening. Like, what are you talking about here, dude? And then not only that, but then we have we have what's going on with all of these very sensationalized, and the media is doing this on purpose. The media says that people like me radicalize people, and then we should be kicked offline, but they're literally radicalizing people. They are radicalizing people by withholding context, not telling them the truth, not telling them exactly how it is, and people are going out and attacking other people and killing other people. 30 people died just since the death of George Floyd in these riots. 30 people. There was a cop who was shot in the head. He's paralyzed from the neck down forever. There was a couple of people that just died just a couple of days ago. And this is what's happening because the media, which is supposed to be in search of the truth and informing the people, they are doing what they're doing. They are lying. They're withholding information. And there are a lot of people that believe in this because a lot of people, let's be honest, a lot of people are fucking idiots. I just look at what happened with coronavirus. Wasn't there people weren't buying Corona beer?
Oh, yeah,
for a long time because they thought it came from Corona beer?
Corona had shut down production for a while because people didn't want to buy it because they associated the name with the virus.
And so these people have a vote. You understand how dangerous that is, right? These people, their votes count as much as my vote does. This is absolutely dangerous.
Yeah, but it could be proven that those votes don't really matter anyways. I don't mean theirs. I mean in the end, the system has already picked out who they want. A lot of times, which is why Trump threw them. Right?
Through who?
Through the system that was trying to put in Hillary.
Well, now, I mean, just look at what they're saying now with him. They said that, in the beginning, for the first couple of days after the election, it'll appear that Trump has won in a landslide. But after the mail-in ballots come in, then Biden's going to. This is what they're saying. They just came out with this big simulation. They said that.
See, and here's just to kind of take it a little further into the whole elite thing and this whole messed up spin is it seems. The perception I'm getting in everything I've read, and I realize a lot of people think Trump's a very unsavory character, but It seems to me like he's going against the system, and they don't like that, and they're doing anything they can to stop him.
I mean, one of the biggest parts of that system is the military-industrial complex, and the fact that he isn't starting any new wars, that's a big problem for them, right?
Sure.
That's a major problem.
Well,
for them.
that's because a lot of money in the course of the world's struggles,
Right.
a lot of the money exchanges and the money that's been made has come from wars.
Right, wars, and then you have the political force behind, or the other the other reasons for war, and that is the lobbyists, resource grabs, and land grabs.
Land grabs.
You could look at the country of Israel, for instance.
Yeah.
Every time that a war pops off in the Middle East and that country gets destabilized, they grow in landmass, and so we have one of the biggest lobbies in the United States government is AIPAC. Then you have all the money that's behind it. So yeah, I mean, there's a force. And what did Chuck Schumer say when just a couple of years ago? He said that you mess with the intelligence community like Trump is doing, they have 6 ways from Sunday to get back at you. This is what he said, and this is in large part what's happening right now. So yeah, there is the system in place. They thought something was going to happen. I have a magazine at home, a Time magazine. I think it's Time. It says Madam President. I bought this magazine, and it's a picture of Hillary Clinton. They already thought that she was going to win the election. And so on this Time magazine cover, it shows Hillary Clinton as the president. Mm-hmm. And these were pre-printed before the election happened. Well, it turned out Trump won the election, and now I have this magazine wrapped in plastic because I'm saving it because I think it's going to be worth money.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, I have some Iraqi dinar.
You don't want to...
You have some gold...
With Iraqi dinar with Saddam Hussein on it.
Nice.
I got a bunch of those.
Speaking of dinar, one of the countries that Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama destabilized was Libya. And in the WikiLeaks, you remember the WikiLeaks? Mm-hmm. In the WikiLeaks, one of the emails said that Gaddafi had gold dinar, and he was going to set up a pan-African currency. He was going to... It seems like every one of these countries that we target for destabilization are outside of the central banking, right? Outside of the world banking scheme. And this was one of the things that they brought up in the WikiLeaks email, is that he had gold, and he was going to set up a pan-African currency. And so, the famous quote from Hillary Clinton, we came, we saw, he died, and now look what's going on in Libya. For all the talk of like slavery and racism and all this and all the rest of this, we look at Libya right now, and there's literally an open market slave trade happening right now in Libya where Arabs are castrating and selling Africans into slavery right now as we speak, because Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton destabilized Libya. And this just... We can expand this out to
unfortunate
all the other
circumstance
countries.
Or deliberate act.
Deliberate, completely, 100%.
Okay.
It's been listed out of the countries that we were going to destabilize back to the, and just look at the clip from Wesley Clark. He said that there was a plan in place, and he worked in the State Department. There was a plan in place. He got a paper. There's a clip up on YouTube that shows this. He said that they're going to take out 7 countries in this amount of time. And he listed Libya, Afghanistan, Iraq, all these different countries. And they have fallen one by one. And I think the last one on the list is Iran. And look at what they're trying to foment with Iran right now.
Dude, this is a fucking crazy alien ant farm, isn't it? This whole thing. Look at it.
I guess we could describe it like that.
What a fucking crazy alien ant farm. One of my friends was in a band called Alien Ant Farm. And he was a bass player. Adam. Anyways... That's what's going on here. It must be. I mean, this is just this. It's so insane. It's like a hey, shake it, and he and the ants fall that way. And the ants
so
fall that
what
way.
did they gain? What was there to gain when Hillary and Obama did this?
Well, there's all sorts of different
money and power.
Money is one of them. You can look at the Federal Reserve. Look at who's run the Federal Reserve for the past so long, and you can look at... A lot of people have different goals. It's like with what's going on right now with like Black Lives Matter and stuff like that. Like a lot of these different people have different goals. Like there are some Black Lives Matter leaders who say that we want exactly what happened in Haiti to happen here, right? And there are other Black Lives Matter leaders who say, different things. And you look at their About Us page. You look at their... You look at their Black Lives Matter Foundation website, and it shows... It says that we are aiming to destroy the Western prescribed nuclear family structure. This is right on their website. I mean, there are a lot of Marxist elements. And the biggest problem is that a lot of people just don't know their history, right? A lot of people just don't know their history. A lot of people don't know where this rhetoric comes from of the destruction of the Western prescribed nuclear family and equity and all of these different terms that they use. And so a lot of people have a lot of different goals in terms of what's going on right now. Whereas with like the Middle East and geopolitics, a lot of people have a lot of different goals in mind when it comes to that as well. There are lobbies and lobbyists. The biggest and most powerful lobby, some would say, is AIPAC, the Israel lobby. And what they gain from the destabilization of many of the countries that we've been in is land. They can expand their land. Look at the map of Israel before these wars happened. Look at the map of Israel right now. And they have one of the most powerful lobbies in Washington, D.C. There's also money. There's also central banking and the Federal Reserve and resources. And so many people, so many groups have...
Acquisition of wealth at all costs.
Yeah,
at any costs.
You could describe it broadly as wealth in a nutshell, right?
That's pretty much what I do. I mean, there's a reason for that, because... The reason why I say that is because I think, and a lot of the guests that we've had on here, Adam Wiener's one of them, even Guy, I think there's a lot of people who are, with all the information that's available, and you've dove very deeply into it, and I give you credit for that. That's some serious,
funny,
serious fucking shit that you've...
I love that guy.
Yeah. But the point being is everybody has so much information available, and there's a huge awakening going on, and we are advocates of that awakening. Maybe not to the level of research that you have done on it, but we can see it in with our eyes. We can feel it in our hearts and in our soul. We can feel it that something is wrong and something is not going right, and that there's layers upon layers upon layers of deceit and trickery, and we believe that this is not the course for humanity to continue like this. This is now a global issue. We are a global community. We are all attached to each other and connected to each other in ways that we even try to deny. And we are getting smaller and smaller as a planet, and there's less places to hide. We're connected. We have to deal with all of this. And if this is how it's going to continue like this, what does that say about humanity? If this is how it's going to continue, wouldn't you agree?
Well, I mean, we're going to be destroyed. There has to be some sort of pendulum swing back.
Sure. So here's what
I wouldn't say we're getting smaller and smaller as a world. There's only really one continent in the world that's actually growing in population.
No, I don't mean as far as population. I'm talking about how far away we seem from each other.
Oh, right, certainly.
With technology and travel and exchange
that has
of
a lot to do with
resources
a lot
and
of other
ideas.
things too, right. And then the community, the breakdown of the community, the breakdown of organizational membership. I mean, back, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, there was homogeneity, right? There was community. There was a sense of community. There were people.
Community is lost.
Neighbors talked
yes.
to neighbors, and people would show up at your house. And come in, and you would spend time with your neighbors, and you would be very close with your neighbors, and you would be in the PTA and the parent teachers organization, and you would be association.
That happens here, by the way.
In Knights of Columbus,
that happens here. I know almost all of my neighbors.
Yeah, well, I would say in my neighborhood too.
Personally,
that's because that neighborhood's very your neighborhood seems very homogenous. My neighborhood's very homogenous, and so there are certain neighborhoods where that happens, but it's getting less and less and less.
Yeah, and that's a tragedy.
Right, certainly 100%.
So when you see people talking about defunding the police and leaving it up to the communities to handle their own problems, how do you feel about that?
It'll be, part of me wants the police just to pull out of every single largely black area of the country and see what happens. They'll be begging for the police to come back. But then the other part of me wants to continue to do what I'm doing and tell the truth. It's like if the police were to pull out of Baltimore, which has one of the highest homicide rates in the country. It's something like 57 per 100,000 people. This is higher than Rio de fucking Janeiro. This is higher than most third world and South and Central American cities as far as the homicide rate is concerned. If police pull out of Baltimore, and the police are defunded and they replace them with like gender-affirming anti-racist counselors or something like that, the homicide rate would go from 60 per 100,000 people to 140 per 100,000 people.
What's that movie, The Purge?
Basically, I mean that's basically it'd just be like absolute lawlessness, absolute chaos, and there would be thousands of more blacks killed by other blacks in the city of Baltimore. Think about it like this. There are 8,000 black Americans killed by other black Americans on a yearly basis. 8,000. That is more than the KKK has killed in their entire history. 8,000 every single year. The numbers don't even come close in terms of white-on-white homicide. Now, this is with the police. This is with the police with the largest budgets in a lot of these different areas. Most of the homicide only happens in about 4 or 5 different areas of the country. If the police were to pull out of Baltimore or Chicago, where 90% of the gun homicide is committed by Black Americans, the rate of homicide would increase so exponentially that the population of Black Americans in that particular city would begin to dwindle to basically non-existent after a pretty short period of time. They would kill each other at such high rates, people would be so afraid to go outside of their home. This doesn't sound like freedom to me. What is this call to defund the police? It doesn't even make any sense.
My argument on one of our shows was they shouldn't be defunding the police. They should be putting more money into it.
Right.
And the reason they have to put more money into it is not because we need to have a police state, but it's because, number one, we have to have more effective police. And I don't just mean that, there's more police on the street, but I think some of the police need to be qualified a little better. You don't just put anybody in there, and more intensive psychological profiling, because we all know mental illness is out there. And number two, they have to have more money to create an effective community-driven police system. Now, you can't have just only community police, because sometimes that vested interest in a community becomes too much of a vested interest, especially in a neighborhood that's struggling. Now you got, corruption and all that other shit, so there needs to be a check and balance. But don't defund the police. Give them more money to attack these two areas. And I'm sure there's more areas that I haven't even touched on that need attacking with more money. Not less.
Think about it like this. There were millions of police interactions last year. Millions. Tens of millions, probably. I don't remember the exact number. Only nine unarmed Black Americans were shot and killed by police last year versus 27 unarmed white Americans shot and killed.
So it's an over-exaggeration and sensationalization.
Those 9 even were committing
what's going on,
too.
actually.
But those 9 were like beating up women, charging at police, trying to tackle those police.
So it's an emotionally elevated situation already on both sides of the fence.
The problem is not police. The problem is criminality. The problem is culture. The problem is family. The problem goes back down to the roots, but they're trying to attack these symptoms, and they're not even symptoms in a lot of cases. A lot of the shit's just fake, and they're poking at these things. And what does the media do? Do they tell them, well, actually, here's the facts. Here's what happened. This is actually what's going on. They don't. They just stoke this. They just fuel this flame and fuel this fire. And so if there's any part of the head, or if there's any head of the Hydra that we need to cut off immediately, it's the media. And when Donald Trump says they are the enemy of the people, they truly are the enemy of the people and are responsible for a lot of this death and chaos and destruction that we're seeing right now.
Yeah. Ratings generates revenue. And the more sensational something is, the more viewership and revenue is generated.
It's fine. Right? Tell the truth, though.
Well, a lot of people don't want to hear the truth.
Well, they don't want to tell the truth either.
And they don't want to tell the truth.
So
okay. So I think, kind of going back to round off your thing, it seems to me like you're pushing for, as a solution, sanity. Okay. So your solutions to this is what?
Not less police, more police.
Okay. So we got that. But I mean, you hit on something very important here. You talked about family and you talked about values.
Well, not only that, and then outside of that, we need more of a possibility, more of a capability to combat this mainstream media narrative. We need more voices in the conversation. What they're trying to do is reduce the amount of voices in the conversation so that they can get that stranglehold, control back over the conversation, back over the flow of information. What was it 20 years ago? 20 years ago, there was no social media. There was no Facebook. There was no MySpace. There was maybe MySpace. There was none of this super hyper connected. Anyone could be a journalist. Anyone could spread information. Anyone could be on Twitter and have a tweet go viral. Anyone could be on YouTube and have a video go. 20 years ago, there was none of this. So the media, the mainstream national media, had a stranglehold over the flow of information. And so what they don't like is that we're able to come here. We're able to plop down a camera, sit in your garage with a microphone, and film a video and tell it how it is. They don't like us doing that. This is why I was terminated from YouTube. They don't like that I had 50 million views They don't like that I was able to reach people and change people's minds. And so we need more voices in the conversation. We need to do something about social media, censorship especially. This is absolutely has to be one of the top priorities, because if there is no alternate voice on social media, alternative voices on social media in order to combat this mainstream media narrative, which is wrong, which is lies, like I said, they are the enemy of the people, then all that there is left is this only single flow of information, which is coming from, the mainstream national media.
The top conglomerates.
Right, the top conglomerates, right, exactly.
So, well, yeah.
Then family, tradition, culture. I mean, this is my whole show. I mean, this is all what this is about.
We're trying to find ways just to keep the human vibe going amidst all of this. We know it's crazy out there. We know there's a lot of chaos. We know there's a lot of lies and deceit and hand over fist stealing and lying and cheating and taking. And we just want everybody to know that we know what's going on. We're not stupid. And we're advocates for you and for people that are awoken and awake and that know that something's not right on a deep level. Hey, man, we get it. We're here for you. And we believe that things could be way better than they are. Way better.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Do you have any more questions, George?
I do.
Okay,
I have a
go.
list. What are your thoughts? And if you don't want to answer any of these, let me know. What are your thoughts on Biden and Kamala Harris?
Biden and Kamala Harris. Let's think here. Well, Biden is definitely clinically senile. There are a lot of times, I'd say on most occasions, he can't string 5 words together to form a sentence. He sniffs children. I don't know if you noticed that or not. Have you seen some of the compilation videos going around where he's like weirdly like smelling children and touching children? Mm-hmm. Very strange. He talked about children rubbing his hair in the pool. I don't know if you heard that clip or not. Kamala Harris will probably be the surrogate. If Biden gets elected, she'll probably be the surrogate president of the United States of America. She said, and it would be absolutely terrible what will follow. There will be no pinhole of light left at the end of the tunnel if Kamala Harris, Joe Biden gets elected, which will in turn install Kamala Harris as the surrogate president of the United States. And maybe the president of the United States, once they determine that Joe Biden is no longer fit to be president, and he agrees and he steps down, and I think that's probably one of the main goals towards the end there. But yeah, absolutely. Okay, I can't wait till
why her no go? What's your no go with her?
Well, first of all, a lot of the policy proposals that she's put forth. Second of all, some of the things that she said about white people in general. But more so, I mean, it would just be like, just look at some of the things that she's advocated for in the past. I mean, it's just, it would be, I mean, in terms of guns, let's look at guns, for instance. I'm a huge Second Amendment supporter. And she said that basically one of the policy proposals that she came up with was that anyone who would be considered a white nationalist will have their guns taken away from them. This is something that she said. Well, what is the media calling Kyle Rittenhouse right now? They're calling Kyle Rittenhouse a white supremacist. They're calling, tons of different conservative content creators online, on social media, white supremacist and white nationalist. And we know this term has been overused. Of course, we know this, but this is, just imagine where that can go.
But isn't that just the other side asking for the world and knowing they're going to have to meet in the middle somewhere?
Well, I mean, if we just
doesn't that kind of happen a lot? I mean, look at the divisiveness in the United States with politics in general. That's always how it is. One side asks for this, one side asks for that. They end up meeting in the middle in most cases.
Well, no, because if we look at the shift in power in this country,
well, I'm not talking about the shift in power. I'm talking about the traditional model of Democrats and Republicans,
that's what I'm saying.
Is changing now. I mean, it doesn't matter anymore now. It's all backdoor deals anyhow. now, but
Well, it's always been. But what I'm saying is that if we look at the House of Representatives and we look at what they can get done legislatively, and we look at the shift of the demographic shift that has happened in America, and we look at potentially it never being the case that a Republican is going to be able to win a Senate seat in the near future or be able to win the presidency in the near future because of the demographic shift that has happened in America and because of the way that the vote breaks down across racial lines in this country. We look at that shift in power going completely in one direction, whereas before it was sort of like ebbed and flowed, right? We'd have Republicans and then we'd have Democrats and so forth.
that's the check and balance I'm talking
Well,
about.
this is the route that it's going is completely one-sided, completely in the other direction.
Well, Trump got in, though. He's been in there for 4 years.
Right, but he might be the last Republican president ever because of what's happening with demographics in the country.
Well, that'll be interesting to see if that's truly the case.
Well, it's just simple mathematics. I mean, if you just look at the way that people have voted over the past 60 years, different groups in America, and look at who's becoming the majority groups in America, it's almost inevitable.
Well, it'll be interesting to see. Did he answer your question?
Yes, and
Okay.
I have another. Going back to Kyle Rittenhouse, his actions were justified, and but a lot of people are saying to, his mother be held accountable for driving him over the state line, and allowing him to take this rifle with him and do what he did. How do you feel about that?
Well, here's the thing: is that here's another why this is it's so important to have social media, is because that's the narrative that you have. But here's what actually happened:
Okay.
the lawyer for Kyle Rittenhouse has come out and announced this. He just got suspended from Twitter for speaking the truth about the case and spreading the truth about what really happened with Kyle Rittenhouse. He's actually one of the lawyers for the Covington Catholic kids. You guys remember the Covington Catholic kids, where they exposed that he wasn't a Native American Vietnam veteran, and they weren't the ones who went up after him. He went up to them, and he wasn't a Vietnam veteran at all. He was fixing refrigerators in Kansas at the time of the Vietnam War. Anyway, the lawyers, and they just got millions of dollars from the Washington Post for lying about them, from CNN for lying about that. I mean, they made out like bandits.
Yeah.
These kids. Anyway, the same lawyers for those kids are backing Kyle Rittenhouse right now, and this was just covered just the other day. He did not carry the gun across state lines. The gun was his friend's gun. And in the state of Wisconsin, he was legally allowed to open carry that rifle. Secondly, he did not go across state lines to participate in this riot or this rally. He was working as a lifeguard in Kenosha at the time that the whole thing broke out. And so this is why it's so important to have social media and to have voices out there, because now the media is going to pay big time for this false narrative that they spun about Kyle Rittenhouse, who they're also calling a white supremacist, who they're also calling a neo-Nazi right now. Verified journalists who work for the New York Times and the Washington Post are calling this kid a neo-Nazi, effectively. And this is, I just keep talking about social media. It's so important to be able to have as many voices as possible in the conversation to combat this false narrative. I mean, those two things are not true. And yeah, he was justified. I mean, any logical, sensible human being will come to the conclusion that he was absolutely justified. He was getting chased down, and he felt even more. He felt his life was even more at threat as he heard a gunshot go off behind him as one guy shot into the air as these people are chasing him down. This was in the first shooting. Then they tackled and he shot someone in self-defense. Then the second time they chased him down. There was people who were attacking him. There was a guy with an illegal pistol who was chasing him. He illegally possessed this firearm because he was a felon who was chasing him. And others were hitting him with skateboards. And others said, "Go get his ass." And in my opinion, I think that he really showed a very high level of concentration and reaction in that particular scenario, which I don't know that I'm actually capable of, honestly. I think that it was completely justified.
Do you think he should be allowed to pursue a career in police, law enforcement?
I mean, I think that he should be allowed to, but I don't think that they're going to allow it. I think they're going to destroy his life for the rest of his life, or at least attempt to. I mean, look what happened with Darren Wilson. You remember Michael Brown? Mm-hmm. Hands up, don't shoot? Mm-hmm. Did you guys know that never happened? Hands up, don't shoot never happened?
Really?
No, I didn't know that.
You didn't know that, right?
No.
Because the media, you still believe that this whole thing. Well, what happened was, it was originally the narrative that he said, "Hands up, don't shoot," and this was told by the witnesses, and the witnesses were black, and the only reason why they lied is because the victim Michael Brown was black, and so they shared his skin color, and we know how people think very racially, white Americans don't really think that racially, but black Americans definitely think racially. And then they came out and admitted that they lied after they were pressed. They said that hands up, don't shoot actually never happened. You can look this up. It's right there. The Washington Post surprisingly covered it in one fleeting article. Hands up, don't shoot never happened. That's the headline of the Washington Post article. Instead of saying hands up, don't shoot, which he never said, he charged that Darren Wilson tried to pull his gun out and tried to shoot him. And so, what did they do to Darren Wilson? Darren Wilson got off, the police. He was justified in his shooting. They determined that he was justified. But he can never work in law enforcement again. And so that's the same thing that they're going to try to do to Kyle Rittenhouse. I mean, I know that I heard that he was trying to pursue a career in law enforcement, but I don't think that when they do that to you, it's just like with me. Once they say something about you, you better change your fucking name.
Yeah.
Maybe I have to do that. Who knows? So,
dude, you got to do a show like this now, where you just listen to other people try to attack the media.
Well, I have my show.
And everybody. No, I mean a new show where maybe we'll get extreme, like real loud about everything and come and talk on your show.
Yeah, for sure. Let's do it. I'm down.
All right, and then they'll blackball us.
They'll ban you.
Yeah,
I'm like a pariah.
Pariah.
That's okay. I mean, if they talk about you, means you're popular, right?
Right. That's true. That's it. That's what they say.
So, what about the caravan in Portland? The caravan of Trump supporters that rolled into Portland, and it was like they say the media says that we're driving, and they said that it was like 600 car caravan full of Trump supporters shooting the Black Lives Matter protesters with paintball guns. And
pretty funny.
All this stuff, and Trump calling them patriots and whatnot.
Yeah, pretty funny. I mean, paintballs are not guns. Paintballs are not bullets. Paintballs are not bike locks to the head like Antifa has been doing. Paintballs are not burning down your business. Paintballs are not shooting cops in the head like what happened with Black Lives Matter in I think it was Arizona or Las Vegas. Paintballs are not anything even remotely similar. Now, if I was, and this is advice that I've given on my show in the past, it's like, this does nothing for us. Like this, like going to these rallies and being like the counter protester and fighting Antifa or fighting Black Lives Matter. Like what positive can come from that other than either you get killed by a far left radical terrorist or a Black Lives Matter person. Either you get killed by them or you have to defend yourself, in which the media is going to destroy your life and you're going to be arrested and possibly face, 10 years in prison or 20 years in prison or the rest of your life in prison. So if I can advise anyone, which is that the one thing that I can say is that don't go to these things. And I mean, if you're like trying to defend your home or your business or something like this, then that's a different story if you live in the area. But I wouldn't advise people to go to these things. It just doesn't make any sense.
Sure.
It's not,
you're exposing yourself to God knows what.
Well, there's a variety of different things that can happen to you, right?
Oh, absolutely. Not just
limitless, almost.
Not just the potential to be exploited by the powers that be, but
killed,
arrested. Watch your shit, dude. What else you got, Jorge?
Let's see.
Hold on, I wrote them down on my hand.
Well, that's because
I got to read the back of my hand.
There's a bunch.
Oh, damn.
But I mean, I'm only asking the ones that
matter.
Yeah, because I mean, you answered them without me even asking them.
So. Oh, cool,
dude! Isn't that awesome?
Yeah,
he came in here. He had a premonition about the questions that you would be asking.
Actually, I was kind of all over the place because I really didn't know where to start with what I was saying or how I was explaining things.
You know what? That's how we roll in here.
Yeah.
We want it to free flow and we want it to be natural and we wanted you to get all
your
those demons out of you.
Your questions
like,
were very right. That's what I mean. And sometimes like my mind just wanders and I can't really focus on one thing at a time. But your questions were very like super general. His questions are very like. Right there. Right?
The reason why I don't ask general questions is because, in like I said, and in my mind and in my heart, I know what's going on. I'm not dumb.
Right.
I'm awoken. My third eye is open. Yeet, yeet. Okay.
Looks like he's got something.
Ooh, maybe he's thinking so hard. He's got something there. What is it?
Do you think if there is there a higher risk of miscount or sabotage by having the votes submitted via mail?
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Mail-in ballots.
Yeah, yes. Especially after.
I wish we had someone to pull us up an article over there, because I'd show you a couple of articles we went over this morning on my show. which is that they said that at first on November, what is it, November 8th or what's the date of the election? November something or other, right?
I think it's
November 4th or
let me see.
November, whatever,
I could
whatever
probably
that
pull it
date is, right? They said that it'll look like Trump won the election in a landslide, but then weeks later, after all the mail-in ballots come in, it'll show that Biden won the election. And so what they're setting this up to be, they're already sort of training our minds to expect something that will take weeks or maybe even potentially months to decide the election, which is just a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
And they're talking about like street fights in the streets and all sorts of violent protests, and it's just not looking good. Not looking good for the near future here.
Do you think what's happening out in the streets, the protests and all, and the caravan and all this shit that's going on, do you think there would be some kind of civil war, race war? Because I've been hearing that term thrown a lot in social media.
I don't know about civil war. I mean,
Or-
what does a
or
civil
race
war
war.
look like? Race war will look like. I mean, we already have race riots happening. We already have civil war. I mean, civil war is we're already at war right now. I don't think that anytime soon it's going to look like something that we imagine, from the 1860s. I don't think that anytime soon it's going to look like anything like that, but we might have little spots here and there where you have these things pop up and you have some people killed and some fights and shit like that and some craziness. But as far as I'm concerned, we are already in a civil war right now as we speak. It's just the modern form of civil war that's happening. I think it'll only get worse before it gets better, but I don't know if that's ever going to look like an actual all-out war in the streets battle. I don't think it'll ever look like that.
I hope not.
So I hope not, too.
I don't think it will. And the reason being is we're going to be so disoriented, and that's the goal, is the disorientation.
Unless the economy collapses, then
then
that's
things
like
would
the
really
last
truly
piece of the
change.
puzzle. Right, that's like the last piece of the puzzle.
As long as those and look, I'm not
as long
going to
as people
say
are fat and happy, as long as
Exactly.
you got your
I've never said I won't go.
Karl Strauss.
I won't go to Target or Walmart or any of these other
Would you like
places.
one?
We all go to those
I don't drink.
places,
Okay.
right? Yeah. We all shop at those places. I try to minimize it, but as long as we're satiated with that stuff, we're not going to riot.
right. As long as we got that
cheap flow of
recliner
consumer
with the
goods.
toilet inside, and then we're just connected to the television screen,
Right?
With your Cheetos and your underwear.
Right,
Yep.
exactly.
It's what I call the illusion of wealth. All right. Now, if you
Right.
if you look at California, for example, okay, and I saw some statistics online recently, the median house price range is $600,000. The median salary is $75,000. The
Okay.
math doesn't add up for
Right.
being wealthy in California. All right, but
True.
if you have access to cheap consumer goods from third world countries
Right.
and cheap entertainment through media conglomerate, like entertainment
Netflix,
conglomerates,
yeah.
Netflix, and all this stuff, where they pay lower wages and consolidate resources and all this stuff. Why would you fight in the street for your?
They keep you hypnotized.
Absolutely.
As long as you got a job to pay for it. And they
Yeah.
also try to hypnotize you with they also try to sort of corral your tribalism. So inherently, we all are tribalistic, right? We're
Absolutely.
tribalistic by nature.
Absolutely.
There's and especially like along racial lines, like there's this famous Muhammad Ali clip out there. I don't know if you've ever seen this, where he sort of breaks this all down, where he talks about how the bluebirds fly with the bluebirds and the redbirds fly with the redbirds and so forth. And so what they try to do to corral that tribalism, that tribalistic instinct within human beings, is like sports. Right, like football and baseball and basketball and
Which
golf
seems
and hockey
healthy,
and things
right?
like
It
this.
seems healthy to corral that tribal energy
I mean, it's
into
sort of like a
sports.
form of hypnotism, though. But now that sports aren't happening, now we're seeing that tribalism go somewhere else, right? We're seeing people get crazy in the streets, and the tribalism be applied to other particular places.
All right,
Where
so you're
potentially they don't want.
bringing up actually a pretty good point here, and that is our state of evolution as human beings. Where there's like these three well documented levels of human evolution: savage, okay, and then barbarian, and then civilized. Those are the three stages. Savage is kind of our animal instinct. Okay, that's the cougar stalking in the jungle. And then the barbarian, well, there's a sense of order, but we're still banging you on the head and crushing your skull and eating your brain. And then there's civilized, where we try to hold to a standard of sophistication and intelligence and evolution. I think a lot of scientists will argue that we are stuck somewhere between barbaric and civilized. We're not quite civilized yet. And that's probably the problem.
Well, yeah, we could talk about barbarism, but we can also talk about morality. There's a breakdown of morality. There's a massive decline in religiosity, which also leads to the breakdown of morality.
Which is the reversal of the progress towards full civilization.
Right. I mean, we're just going...
It's a reversal of the progress, and that's what's happening right
regression. And we have a decline in religiosity. We have a breakdown in the family, and we just have all of these different characteristics and aspects of culture, of the cultural breakdown that we're experiencing right now. And this culture war that we're in right now is that it could be almost irreconcilable. And then add on top of that, all of these other things that are happening in the world, and it's just... But yeah, I mean, just to put it plainly and simply... As long as I continue to advocate for sanity and truth, this is what I'm going to continue to do. And this
so I got a question for you. I got a huge question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so you said you're a Catholic and you said you're a Christian.
Right.
Now, in the Christian and Catholic paradigm, it doesn't matter because Armageddon's going to come and sinners will go to hell and those that are faithful will go to heaven. So why does it matter? Why do you fight?
Why do I fight for truth? Because I'm living here, my kids are going to live here, and no one knows when that day is going to come. No one knows when that day is going to come.
Okay, so you don't surrender to the internal bliss that can come from saying, I've prayed for forgiveness, and therefore I will ascend to heaven despite the suffering that may beset me.
Well, someone would say, well, you can think about it like this in terms of, it's all going to end someday. We're all going to die anyway. So why even act right? Why not just eat a bunch of fucking ho-hos and zebra cakes and chug your beer? And it's because we are in the now. We are living in the now and we don't want to suffer.
So go shoot somebody. And as long as you get on your knees that night and pray for forgiveness, it's okay.
Well, no, because that would be a type of a sin that is...
An unforgivable sin?
Right.
I thought all sins were forgivable,
well, it depends,
except for saying being blasphemous to Jesus.
Under Catholicism, we have venial sin and mortal sin.
No, okay.
So, I don't know what Christians, what Protestants believe, but we have two different types of sin in Catholicism. But I'm talking about along strict moral... So you asked the question, what does it matter if you're a Catholic... if it's all going to end,
okay, so let's say you're not killing people. Let's say you're out there and you're exploiting people, like maybe the media is doing, or the elites or whatever, and that doesn't matter because you're a good Christian and you go to church and you help your neighbors in your community and you're a philanthropist and you give money and that's okay. Therefore, it's okay, and you're also praying for forgiveness for maybe some of the sins that are entangled in the daily processes of making money and doing everything that they do.
Well, what are you asking me? Are you asking me if I can live with myself?
Not you.
Or you mean is it okay if you're doing those things?
What I'm asking you is what drives you?
Oh, what drives me?
Yeah, what drives you?
Well, what drives me is
are you a humanitarian? Are you a philanthropist? Where do you?
I do help. I help financially in certain different.
Forget the money. Forget the money. I'm talking on on a spiritual level.
Well, on a spiritual level, I would say I'm still a sinner. I still sin. I still make mistakes. But I don't drink. I don't do drugs. I don't watch porn.
Oops.
I try to do things good. I try to do things well. I try to do the right thing on a daily basis. But I am flawed. I'm a flawed human being. I'm definitely a sinner. But I derive my morality from Jesus Christ, from God, from Christianity. What I'm saying is that we have a breakdown of religiosity, which is where a lot of people derive their morals from.
Okay. Because and in that breakdown, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, because I know where you're going with this, but could that religiosity translate to other religions that try to teach good values and good humanitarianism, spiritualism, and those morals and values?
Well, what religions?
I don't know. Buddhism, Hinduism.
Where do Buddhists derive their morality from? Because where do atheists derive their morality from?
Well, atheists by definition don't believe in anything.
Right, I know, but where do they get their morality from? How do they know what's right, what's wrong? There's no like
Maybe
universal.
I think there's always a core injection of,
but who
of
makes that
one of the
decision?
traditional religions out there.
Right, I know
that creates a moral compass.
That's what I'm saying. That moral compass is derived from Christianity. It always has been in like civilized nations, right? So, what I'm saying is that there is a continuation of just look at what's going on right now. Like, look at maybe Guy has talked. I didn't watch your podcast with him, but maybe he's talked about this. I mean, look at what they're doing right now with pedophilia. They're trying to make pedophilia a sexual orientation.
Yes.
These people are demonic.
Okay, so that's obviously
right. We can go on and on and on. Actually,
a heinous.
Go ahead.
But
right,
what I'm getting at is, okay, so you are on a crusade of a sense. In my mind, you're on a crusade.
I mean, okay. I mean, I'll accept that, but I'm just trying to.
You're on a crusade.
Speak the truth here. So
okay, so the reason why I bring that up is there's a lot of people out there that have given up hope, and I think a lot of people in the even in the Christian faith have given up hope in trying to be advocates for these good things. They just say, well, as long as I'm a good Christian and I live my good life with my family and that's it, I'll go to heaven and it's all good.
Sounds like a boomer to me.
I don't think that's enough.
It's like a boomer to me.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, that's the biggest problem with the boomer generation is that they were just like, well, I'll let my kids deal with it. Let the next generation deal with it. And now look at where we're at today. It's like...
You know what the Hopi say?
What, the Hopi Indian?
Mm-hmm.
What do they say?
They profess the 7th generation pledge.
What's that? I'm not familiar.
Okay. I'm glad you're asking. Because... the 7th generation, think about that. 7 generations from now. That means your great grandkids. Okay? The Hopi Pledge says you have to think about what your actions today will do 7 generations from now.
Yeah, that's exactly my thought process.
So that sounds like
not that extended
that
up.
saying. I don't know if it's a Greek mythology saying, but
I just threw that in there to kind of
the men that plant the trees today,
stir it up a little bit on
do it for the generations.
What the appropriate moral compass is,
right?
Because they'll never see the shade of whatever.
Yeah,
I don't know how it goes exactly.
Well, that's my thought process: is what am I going to leave to my kids? What is the country going to look like for my kids?
Those are the Hopi Indians.
Yeah, I mean, but that should be the thought process of everyone. It's like
absolutely.
I mean, just look at like, have you ever seen the show Ozark?
Yes.
It's a great show,
it's an awesome show.
And so the what's her name? What's her name?
I don't
Snell? know. What's her first name? Karen Snell or the old lady, right? The one with the dark
wife.
eyes, the wife, right? She said, like, what does it matter? Who do we have to pass this down to? And I think that's a big problem right now in the United States of America in particular, but it basically in every Western country.
There's a loss of that focus.
Well, there's a loss of that focus. There's a loss of focus on children, on family, and we just keep going back to tradition here. But we can go, like I said, we can continue on and on and on and on about this.
I would say, I would argue that it's not the traditions of any particular faith. It is the tradition of the value of humanity.
Well, I mean, there's only certain cultures that actually...
I just gave you one. Right. There's probably 20 more that aren't very well written about.
What do you got? I know you were trying to say something.
I was, and I lost it with what he said.
But come on, dude. I'm not that motivational. I just drink beer.
I forgot, man.
It's all good. I mean, there are certain civilizations, like I would say, it's mostly Western civilization that focuses on common law and order and civilization and family and the nuclear family, the Western.
You don't think they do that in the East?
They may have adopted that to some degree, but that's traditionally that's traditionally Western culture, right? I mean,
Western
just look
culture
at
being who?
Being like mostly as far as like what, like civilizations, law and order is concerned?
Are you talking about like Europe? Are you talking about
like
North America?
Mostly,
are you talking about the
Northern
Islands?
Just go back to what our laws are. Just go back to English common law, the UK, England, right? Common law comes from England.
Okay, so one of the countries that probably is one of the greatest perpetrators of violence across the world as they colonize the world?
Well, yeah, I mean, but would we describe that as violence or what? I mean, because we can go to, like, for instance, the Middle East and like the slave trade, the Arab slave trade dwarfs the transatlantic slave trade, and it's not even close.
Okay, so one had more than the other. So,
I mean, but they're
so
like
that's the difference.
every single group of people, every single country on Earth colonized other countries, committed atrocities, held people. Look at the Barbary slave trade.
So there's a little there's a certain level of equality in the human condition, so to speak.
Yeah, as far as like barbarism is concerned, yeah, 100%. Yeah, as far as like barbaric actions or
when I studied Eastern philosophy and Eastern art in college, one of the really neat themes that they brought up was beware of the Christians. They bring a Bible in one hand and a sword in the other.
Well, I mean, it's sort of like propaganda, I would say.
Well, but the point being,
what nations are nobody's clean to live in, right?
No, hey, you know what? There's plenty of nice nations besides the United States.
Well, I know which are the other nice nations.
The European countries.
Okay, yeah, exactly. Yeah. What else? Maybe Japan.
Yeah, Japan.
That's about it.
Okay. Hey,
I mean, look at Liberia. Liberia adopted our constitution verbatim.
Where's your
They're
wife?
not doing too hot.
Where's your wife from?
Brazil.
Okay.
Yeah. There are parts of Brazil that are nice. It's mostly
parts.
The European parts.
But not all of Brazil sucks.
No, I mean most of Brazil. I mean, it's getting worse and worse and worse. It's mostly like the most European parts of Brazil, where like they have the European traditions and European people in Brazil, where like are the safest.
Portuguese, right?
Yeah, the Portuguese and
your wife's Portuguese, right?
Yeah, Portuguese.
Okay.
Mostly Portuguese, mostly Italian and Italian. But yeah, those are the parts of the country of Brazil that are doing the best in terms of like top quality of medical care and wealth.
Okay, so would you consider yourself Eurocentric? Maybe.
I mean, I would consider that a reaction to what we're seeing right now. That would be what I would say. I never thought about this stuff until all of a sudden we started attacking each other, right? I grew up. I talk about this in my show all the time. Like I grew up, I never thinking about race. You know, white Americans in general are like the least racial people. Like they're the least. Like they think racially the least.
You're talking about the United States?
In general. I mean...
Okay, what about like Europe, Scandinavia?
Yeah, they don't think racially there either. I mean, like if you look at the polling, there's a study out there from Pew Research, and you ask the different groups of people in the United States of America, is your skin color central to your identity? Only a tiny fraction, like 5%, of white Americans say that their skin color is central to their identity. 90% of black Americans say that their skin color is central to their identity. So when I say that white Americans think racially the least, this is what I mean. I mean, you can go to a bunch of different
don't you think it would be easier for the white culture to move past some of the atrocities of our nation's history because we were not the victims of the perpetration?
Our nation's, yeah, it probably would be easier to move past that for white Americans, but what black American experienced that lives right now in this country?
It doesn't matter because that gets passed down generational.
How does it get passed down generational?
The exact thing that you advocate for, the broken family.
No, but the broken family only started getting worse since the 1950s, and we're further away from Jim Crow, we're further away from slavery, we're further away from...
It was generations before that.
No, what I'm saying is that the numbers are there, they're undeniable. In 1945, in 1950, the black out of wedlock rate was only 18%.
Okay.
Today, it's 80%.
Okay.
And that's only past 50 years. And we're further away from Jim Crow, we're further away from slavery, we're further away from segregation, but it's only continued to get exponentially worse as the country gets less and less racist, as blacks have more of a higher income, per capita income, as they get better off in this country. That degradation of their culture continues to get worse. So it can't be.
Okay, but where are those statistics coming from?
It's coming from government statistics. Government statistics, CDC, scientific studies.
Okay.
They're all, I mean, it's very easy to find. All you do is type in out of wedlock rate by race, and you'll find like 10 scientific studies that come up and show that. And then you look at out of wedlock race by decade, and you'll find it by decade. And this is what my whole show is about.
Okay, so how did that tear apart of the family, let's say in the African American or black culture? How did that happen?
I think it was, honestly, if we look at, I go back to like Muhammad Ali, Malcolm X, some of these other black leaders who were black nationalists, by the way. Malcolm X was a black nationalist. Marcus Garvey was a black nationalist. They talk about it in terms of the forced integration. They say that it was at the point in 1965 where the forced integration happened in society, where the black dollar didn't get spent at the black business any longer. And you had this forced integration and everyone mixed up and the melting pot and all of these different things happening. And they say that this was like the start of that. And then the welfare state, the initiation of the welfare state in 1965, which is where the welfare state started, which made black Americans dependent on the state for their means of living, for paying for their houses, for paying for where they live, for paying for their food and things like this. And so because...
Control, right?
Control, right, exactly. It's 100% what it is, control. Okay. See, we didn't have...
The same thing happened with the Native Americans,
welfare prior to the 1965 Act. Right. We didn't have...
But okay, so where's the racial inequality really? Initially.
Right now, today in 2020, there is no racial inequality.
There's not?
Well, aside from if it's against white people, there is 100%. But
okay, so I'll agree with you that currently there is a pendulum swing that way. But where did it start?
I mean, yeah, certainly America does have a racist history, 100%.
Absolutely.
But what's going on right now? They're doing the same exact thing to us.
Yeah, it's a pendulum swing.
So yeah, it could be a pendulum swing, but I think it's a demographic swing, really.
Okay,
and I think that as America changes, it's only going to get worse.
My point being is that this country has been founded on that mentality.
Founded on the mentality of what?
This country was founded on a land grab. It started as a free enterprise, capitalist. First it was free enterprise, and it was a land grab, and then it became capitalist. But it has always had a history of racial bloodshed.
Yeah, I mean, but like I said, all cultures have participated in the attempted land grab. Look at the Moors who invaded Sicily and Spain. But is Spain mostly black now or mostly African? No, it's not, because they lost. Look at, like, for instance, what they did in Haiti, right? The Haitian Revolution, where the French were trying to colonize Haiti. They actually won that. Like, the French showed up on massive ships and coming from civilizations with guns and muskets and stuff like this, attempting to take over Haiti. But the Haitians, with like guerrilla warfare, defended their nation and fought them off and gained independence. Well, Haiti's a shithole now, but this attempted land grab went back and forth. Look at what happened with the Mongolian Empire. So everyone participated. The Arab slave trade, and this is another thing that no one talks about, the Arab slave trade was the biggest slave trade in history. 50 million Africans were killed in the Arab slave trade, enslaved by Arabs. And it's still going on today. White people, European people, were the first people to end slavery. The first by law.
In England, right?
In England was the first one. Yeah, the first people to end slavery.
Okay,
so you can talk about all the bad things that Europeans did.
Kudos right there. There's one mark for the the Northern Islands. Okay.
Look at this. Look, are you what are you med? A Mediterranean or what is your?
I'm everything.
Okay, well I'm like Irish and Italian. I sort of like to side with my Italian side in a lot of different things, but what I'm saying is, like, European people in general, they can talk about all of the bad things that we did throughout history in these college classrooms and foment hatred towards us, but there's like, it's like this much versus this much as far as like good is concerned.
Look, my argument is this: everybody's guilty in this bullshit.
Yeah, everyone
It doesn't fucking matter what ethnicity you come from. White, black, Latino, Asian, I don't give a fuck what the fuck you are. You are, every culture has, just like Paul McCartney said, there's good and bad in everybody. And I translate that to mean in every culture. You got good people that want to do the right thing, that want to have a strong family, that want to have a moral compass and system and do well for their next generations. True. And then you got bad people that want to just don't fucking give a fuck.
Right.
And it doesn't matter what color your skin is or what your culture is or your ethnicity. There is good and bad people in every single corner of this planet.
That's true.
In every culture.
No one's like denying that.
And to you, I say that there is a pendulum swing in this country right now, and I think I've argued very loudly that there's a reason for that, and it should swing back. I agree with you. So my ultimate statement is we have to get over each other. We have to get over ourselves.
We have to figure out how we're going to live together. Otherwise,
Exactly.
this is not going to.
This is not going to work. This is not
Right, this is not
sustainable.
going to work.
And as much effort as this guy puts into his podcast on these issues should clearly illustrate that this has to stop. All of it has to stop. We have to stop
have the
hating each
conversation,
other. We have to stop looking for the flaws in each other. We should acknowledge that we're not perfect people. None of us. I don't give a shit what color you are or culture you are. I don't give a fuck. We're not perfect. I'm not perfect. None of us are perfect. None of us.
Right.
I'm perfect.
But we
You're
have
perfect.
to keep the conversation going. Absolutely. How do we get through this? How do we fix this? There's too much information available. Everything is transparent now. There are no secrets anymore. All the secrets have been exposed. So how do we move forward?
Well, let's start here.
Start here
In
at
the
this
United
podcast.
States. Yeah.
And with that,
All right.
right here at this podcast, right here at this table, this is where it begins.
Thank you, Vince, for coming in. That was rad,
No
dude.
problem. Thanks for having me, you guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Are we
man.
doing the fist pound or the handshake or what?
Oh,
we
whatever
wearing
you're
masks?
I'm
comfortable
gonna
with,
I'm gonna give you
because-
this one right here.
Wait, what if they start making YouTubers wear masks? Like they start like banning your video if you're like in a podcast like this, like you're in close proximity to each other. And then YouTube starts banning your
take that
videos
up.
because you're not wearing masks.
We'll take that up when they
start
start it.
about that and
Right.
about the Karens and whatnot.
Right.
And-
Well, the Karen is
That was a
basically
funny
like a
one.
racial epithet towards like white women. Honestly, this is what it's been
do you
become.
think it's on the same level as the N-word? Do you
I don't
think?
I don't know. No, I don't think so.
No.
Not yet.
Because
not
a lot
yet.
of people
Sorry,
are saying that.
But the
it was.
Washington Post editor,
No, not even close.
yeah, the Washington Post editor, whose name is Karen, she's black. Her name is Karen Atia. She said that white people are just lucky. She's the top editor for the Washington Post, one of the top editors. She said that white people are lucky that we're just calling them Karens right now and not calling for revenge against them yet. This is what the Washington Post said. Can you imagine if a white person said that in the reverse? Like, they would be fired immediately. But, you know,
Huh?
that's just
I
the way our
agree with
society
you.
goes
Okay.
right now. So, anyway, let's end it.
There's your pendulum.
Let's end it
There's
there.
your pendulum. Come on, folks. We got to swing this back to center ground. You know, look at the balance. There's the balance. I'm talking about this forever and
Doll.
ever.
All right.
Thanks, Vince.
Cool.
Thank you, man.
That was fucking awesome.
That was awesome. Are we done?